As we follow the Women's World Cup and the Men's Ashes this winter, we're excited to be partnering with WPA Health Insurance, the most trusted health insurer in the UK, offering health insurance plans for individuals, families and companies of all sizes across the UK. WPA is based in Taunton and is a long-standing partner of Somerset County Cricket Club. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. The Ashes build-up continues. Aussie captain Pat Cummins looks increasingly likely to miss at least a part of the series. What does this mean for England's chances and how his likely replacement, Scott Boland, get on? England are also in action this weekend. Their tour of New Zealand starts on Saturday. We also talk wacky T20 leagues and we hear from two of England's most exciting quick bowlers, Mark Wood and Sonny Baker, at very different ends of their career journeys. I'm Yaz Rana and with me today are Lawrence Booth and Phil Walker. But first, let's hear from Mark Butcher. Butch, it's increasingly likely that Pat Cummins will miss at least a section of this series. In truth, I don't really know what to believe at the moment. It looks like he'll definitely miss at least one, but there's no clarity at all from anyone really in terms of how much of the series he'll take part in. Should he miss between 1 and 5 test matches, what are Australia losing and how big a deal would it be? There, some pundits in England have gone as far as saying that this actually changes what they think will happen in the series.
Yeah, I mean, it's enormous, obviously. Captain of the side, one of the best 3 fast bowlers in the world. It's a huge loss to Australia, even if it's only for the first test, and particularly if it's for the first 2, because they are likely to be the most bowler-friendly test matches in the Ashes. So it's a massive loss, and I think it doesn't surprise me that the information in terms of what the injury is exactly and how bad it is and how long he'll be out for is being kept under wraps, because that is befitting of the importance to Australia of Cummins. So all of this is pretty good news as far as England is concerned, and pretty bad news as far as Australia is concerned. So look, we will wait and see. But the truth of the matter is he hasn't bowled for a very, very long time. So even if he was to sort of be fit enough to start bowling around about the time of the first test match starting, just what sort of form and fitness he has going into the second one will also be in doubt. So we'll have to watch this space, but it's only good news for England.
I guess part of that is that compared to previous England trips down under, Australia's bowling depth isn't quite as absurd as it has been in previous years, where in 21-22, for example, everyone who stepped in was 100% oven ready at that level. Whereas this time round, a lot of the guys who've been tipped for a spot in the fast bowling group at some point in the next year or two, a lot of them are also injured. Lance Morris is out of the whole winter. Jai Richardson is expected to be back quite soon, but he's not played any cricket at all since doing his shoulder in January. Brendan Doggett is currently injured. So it doesn't leave as many bowlers as they've had in the past. The most likely person by a very long way to come in, though, is Scott Boland, who's got an amazing test record. But the last time he came across England, it didn't go very well for him. He played 2 tests in the 23 Ashes, Edgbaston and Headingley. Goes at 6s at Edgbaston and is only used for 21 overs in a very close game at Headingley. Yeah. There's been a lot said in both the English and Australian media about how England will view Boland. What do you think about Boland's overall threat level against this England side in particular? Because conditions in Australia are going to be completely different to what he came across in England 2 years ago.
Yes, and his record at home as a fill-in bowler is astonishing. What's he averaged 13 or something? So, whilst on the one hand, England's scar tissue will not be particularly pronounced against Scott Boland after the Ashes at home. He's somebody that you kind of underestimate at your peril. But of course, if you're looking at it in the context of him replacing Cummins, then obviously it's great news. He is not Pat Cummins. So Australia won't be hugely weakened, particularly should the bowling conditions be relatively fruity in the first couple of tests. I think Boland is a terrific replacement. But if he ends up having to be in the side at the expense of Cummins throughout the whole thing, then that might not be quite such good news. But look, I think people tend to underestimate him because he's not particularly quick, and England really took advantage of that sort of lack of pace over here by treating him as a sort of a medium pacer and taking the piss really. Whether or not that'll be the case on slightly quicker, bouncier Australian pitches, which he absolutely loves, then it remains to be seen. But there's a slight psychological uptick for England, knowing that it's going to be him and not Cummins for sure.
Mm. Is there, I guess, a danger in people almost not realizing what English pitches are nowadays and what Australian pitches are nowadays? Because the stereotypical view of what an English pitch is, as a green seamer does a bit early on in particular. But actually, in the last few years, it just hasn't been that at all. And then the flip side in Australia, where pitches have historically been flatter, it's done a lot for seamers in recent years. That 2023 series and the cricket we saw in it could be very different to what we see this time around, just because of how flat it was for a lot of that series. And using a comparison to an England bowler, James Anderson averaged 85 in that series, and we know he was quite a good bowler. That we could see very different cricket this time around.
Yeah, could do. Again, I think sort of matching up the bowling resources of both likely, well, so let's say likely 11s, but in terms of England, their 16-man touring squad. I think Australia ought to be very wary of the idea of playing England on pitches that do a bit. In days gone by, where England were perhaps underpowered in the pace department, you could kind of take that punt that your bowlers and your batters would outplay England on surfaces where it did something. But I think, given what England have to pick from, to choose from in their fast bowling ranks, you'd be a little bit wary about having the pitches too spicy. And I know, Cricket Australia will say, or the Australian team will say, we don't really have much to say about what the individual curators do at the individual Test match grounds. But I'd be incredibly surprised if if a word hasn't gone out to say, listen, these pitches need to be as good as possible, as Australian as possible. So you got pace and bounce and all the rest of it, and the threat with the new ball kookaburra. But you really wouldn't want to be kind of like rolling the dice, and almost giving away home advantage by having the ball move excessively throughout the course of what could be short games, if that is the case. So let's wait and see. I hate to try and preempt what conditions are going to be like anywhere, particularly when you're thousands of miles away and over a month away from the first test. So let's wait and see on that one.
On that, do you is your view, because if pitches are a bit spicier, that brings the way England bat into the game a little bit more? One really good hour batting the way a lot of that top seven does can completely change a game. Where actually on a really flat pitch, take Edgbaston this summer as an example, you can have the sort of session that Jamie Smith had when he scores 178, but
yeah,
it's flat, so you need to score millions to keep yourself.
You need to score millions, and you need to do them over a longer period of time. The traditional way of Australia sort of beating up opposition at home has been to make it very, very difficult for the opposition's bowlers to take wickets in anything less than 120 to 130 overs. And then the skill and the experience of their bowling attack on those surfaces, being able to do damage in 90 to 100 overs, but have them score 150 to 200 less on first innings. I mean, that's how Australia have always played their cricket at home. And they kind of, they beat you into submission over a long period of time until eventually the dam bursts and they go rushing through you and mop it up quickly in the end. So it'd be interesting. I mean, it'd be great fun, wouldn't it? I mean, if they are incredibly spicy, and as you say, the way that England play, they don't need a second invitation to try and take a lot of risks and to put bowlers off running up and bowling a consistent line of length. And if you have an entire lineup that prefers, actually, because it rather excuses you from absolves you from from riskiness. You kind of riskiness becomes a good thing when the ball is doing a bit. It makes England's batting lineup very, very dangerous. Where they're not so dangerous is when the conditions are even, and you end up with one team batting 120 to 130 overs, and they get to within 100 or get level, but only bat 70 or 80, and then their bowlers are back out there again, and then it becomes very difficult third, fourth innings of matches.
Well, only 6 weeks of hypotheticals around what the conditions
Hypotheticals. I mean,
yeah,
some of the nonsense has already started, hasn't it? Talking about moral victories and wins. And
there needs to be a ban.
It's horrendous.
There needs to be a genuine ban on the use of the word moral between now and the end of the Ashes. It is so bad. It's also. I'm actually trying to get Ben to write something on this, the history of everyone losing their minds over the word moral here. Like, where did it actually start? And I think people are taking it to mean different things as well. And it's ultimately not only meaningless, I'm struggling to work out what people actually mean by moral victories and the moral Ashes.
No, it's all been lost in the ether. But I mean, in terms of the sort of traditional meaning of morals, I mean, we could have Steve Smith back as captain again. So that opens up its own moral can of worms. For those who like that sort of stuff. But we've got 6 weeks. 6 weeks of the nonsense ramping up to unbearable levels.
But cricket this week, England's tour of New Zealand, 3 T20Is and 3 ODIs. You hear England players talk, and maybe not quite the T20s, but they are really viewing those ODIs as proper Ashes prep, really. They only play one warm-up game in Australia, and that's against the England Lions before the first Test match. So it'd be quite an odd dynamic to those to that ODI series in particular.
Yeah, well, I suppose any sort of high level contest in the lead up to an Ashes is a good thing, whether or not the format lends itself to real preparation for it, but just sort of like being in the battle and kind of. New Zealand are going to be very, very competitive. The conditions are not going to be 100. They're not going to be 100 miles away from pitches in Australia. Kookaburra ball. Oh, there's lots of things to be gained from that. And I think getting the competitive juices going in one way or another is always a good thing. So yeah, absolutely, they should be taking it on. Of course, the next World Cup isn't far away either, and so there's a lot to be gained, I think, from taking that incredibly seriously. And Harry Brook needs, as captain, to kind of get his unit together, playing overseas and all the rest of it. So there are all kinds of positives about having that series going into it, albeit that it's in 50 over format, not Test match format. Yeah,
viewers might think that a New Zealand series is quite unfriendly from a viewing perspective, but the T20 series is actually very watchable, or fairly watchable from an England time zone point of view, because they start at about 7 a.m.
Perfect.
The ODIs start at 1 a.m. That's less good. But the T20Is should be all right. Cool. Let's leave it there for today. Cheers, Butch. Catch you next time. Lawrence, following the Pat Cummins news, Michael Vaughan, writing in the Telegraph, wrote, with the news of Pat Cummins' injury sinking in, one or two will think England are now favourites this winter. I would not argue against it, but I would also be very wary. I'm not quite sure if that means that he's for it or not, but how big a deal is it?
Well, it is a big deal. He's their captain. He's the main strike bowler. He's the guy who takes the hard wickets in the difficult conditions when Australia need it. He's an excellent number 8 batsman, as England won't need reminding. Edgbaston 2023 basically wins them the Ashes in that first test. Not having Cummins there would be huge. However, and there are so many caveats in this discussion, because Scott Boland comes in, and not since SF Barnes before the First World War has a test bowler taken more wickets at a lower average than Scott Boland. Forget what happened in England in 2023. He's a serious operator, particularly at home. And Steve Smith is a better captain than Pat Cummins. I don't care what people say about what Cummins has done with this Australian team. He's also looked lost when it's gone wrong. Thinking of Manchester 2023, even the World Test Championship final here against South Africa. Smith is always won over. It's a bit like Stokes. He's won over ahead of the game. Cummins always felt a bit behind the game. So actually, Smith v Stokes as a captaincy duel is mouthwatering. Smith is a problem solver both as a batsman and a captain. So if you lose Cummins, you get Boland's bowling and Smith's captaincy, but you lose Cummins as a package, and you get closer to Australia's nightmare scenario, which is one more injury among the seamers, and then you're into the second tier, which is clearly there's a big drop off there. So both teams can take from it what they will.
Phil, how do you see it? Cummins has gone okay overall as captain, you'd say.
Yeah, they have the same number of wins, the same win ratio, Stokes and Cummins, which is just a quirk. But obviously, Australia don't tend to lose Test matches, and England contrive to lose a few that arguably they probably shouldn't. I think it's a hugely significant moment. I think you can argue the toss regarding the win-loss column, if you like, of the pros and cons column. I can understand that, but I think if you turn up with your champion in a tracksuit on the first morning, and I think the impact that will have on English belief will be significant. And I think his genius, Cummins, is that he changes the direction of cricket matches when nothing else is happening. You know, his accuracy is extraordinary. That's his real special talent. That's what separates him from basically every other bowler, with one or two exceptions, of the century. That's the level that we're talking about here. And as long as Cummins is fit, then Australia are in every game they're playing. It doesn't matter how flat it might be. It doesn't matter how sunny it might be. It doesn't matter how good form Root and Brook may be in at some point across that winter. If Cummins is there, then he can always change the direction of a cricket match. Scott Boland is a fabulous replacement for sure, but a personal view, and this will obviously come back to bite me on the arse, but a personal view is that there's not a world of difference between the pitches that were served up 2 years ago and the kinds of pitches that we may expect here upcoming. In that, if you look at that Leeds game where he went wicketless, and the game was 250 versus 270 versus 280 versus. Sorry,
he just wasn't used that much in that game.
No, he wasn't, because England had a way of dealing with him. And okay, the boundaries are shorter, which I think is relevant across the board when it comes to England's attacking approach. But broadly, they had a way of getting at Boland. They recognised that he was a couple of clicks slower than the others, and were able to bat out of their crease and come at him. And this is the way that they play against any medium-fast bowler. Now, it's not always going to work, and notably, it doesn't always work, especially with one or two players. But they took him up and they took him down in that Test match. Now, you're going to get pitches with a bit of green on them, and you're going to get pitches that are going to offer a little bit of life, and I think that's established now. And so it may play into Boland's hands, or it may be that England will have a way of nullifying him. There's no doubt that while he's a fine replacement, there's no comparison. And Cummins has that champion central character energy thing going on. And if you lose that, then it does feel from England's point of view that they can rock up at Perth and just feel slightly that they can put aside the doubts just a tiny bit more, because if he is genuinely out for the first 2-3 Test matches, and it remains to be seen, of course, then I think that's huge. And as Lawrence rightly says, Australia's strength historically is that they've got 4, 5, 6, 7 waiting in the wings. They're all 6'6", like, you know, your Lance Morris type characters. But a lot of them are struggling with injury at the minute. You know, Morris would be playing Test cricket, but I think he's out for the whole of the Australian summer. Brendan Doggett is a really, really good kind of swing bowler, swing like Damien Fleming style swing bowler, who I've watched a lot. I think he's excellent. He was a key man in the Shield last year, but again, he's got a hamstring injury, and again, you never know with hamstring injuries. It could be 3 months, it could be 6 weeks. They have Michael Neser as well, Sean Abbott. They would be, I guess, the next in line, but they're not going to hold any great fears for the English. The headline coming into this series is that England's batsmen will go after Australia's superior bowling attack, and those three that triumvirate are all-timers. Well, if you lose one, if you lose the figurehead, then unquestionably it will change the dynamic. Unquestionably.
On a personal level, Lawrence, if Cummins doesn't end up playing a lot in this series, how disappointed or sad will you be that we don't get to see as both of you have said, one of the great seamers of the 21st century doing his thing in a series that so many people can't wait to watch.
Yeah, to a degree. But then, when history looks back at these series, it tends not to go... You look at 2005 Ashes, the first headline is not that Glenn McGrath stood on the ball and missed Edgbaston, where England then got going with 400 in a day. It's that England won a terrific series 2-1, and that's all we talk about. And how many times have England gone to Australia and players have got injured and main figures have been ruled out? So, yes, it would be a shame. It would be lovely if England could turn around at the end of the winter and go, we beat Australia's full-strength team, and Cummins was there and he still couldn't do anything about it. India, when they won the first of their 2 series in Australia, there was no Smith and Warner, and of course that was held out against them, and then they had to go back again and won again. So yeah, these things, but I don't think England fans are going to be too picky. England fans will take a win in any way. They won't care who's missing.
I read some quotes from Cummins. It would have been maybe 48 hours ago now, and he said that he's running every other day and for longer distances with each run. That he's not put the boots on yet, and he thinks that'll be around 3 to 4 weeks yet. There's a big question, I suppose, around him being undercooked. I'm not so concerned about that personally. I think when you have an action as good as his, when you know your game as well as he knows it, and also with modern cricket now, players coming in and out more than they used to. We're putting a lot of truck by Mark Wood, just as we put a lot of truck by Jofra Archer playing his first red ball game in 4 years, and he turned up here at Lords and he was the best bowler on the park. I wouldn't, if I was Australia, be too concerned about him coming in at 70% and not having much rhythm, because I just think he's such a champion that I think he would overcome that problem. Whether he is genuinely in a physical position to be able to do it or not is another thing, but I wouldn't be too worried about him getting to an optimum point of fitness the week before Adelaide, say, and then coming in and dominating.
Well, what's going to be interesting is if, let's say, Cummins misses 2 tests, are you honestly saying that Stark and Hazelwood are playing 5 tests each?
Yeah.
Because they're probably not going to.
Yeah.
So suddenly, and Boland's not going to play 5 tests, and suddenly you're looking at England's sort of coterie of fast bowlers, and their strategy all along has been we'll mix and match throughout. We'll hit them probably with Archer and Wood first because we need to win that first test. We don't win Australia if you lose the first test. So England look like they have the edge in terms of how they're going to spread their attack. Australia have for many years now thrown all their eggs in the big 3 basket plus Nathan Lyon. They've only needed a 4-man attack. They've tried to get an all-rounder involved, but it doesn't have the same kind of edge that Stokes has or Flintoff used to have. So, Cummins' potential absence of Test 1 and possibly 2 has knock-on effects for the other guys. That's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, you were talking about Ashes series with injuries to fast bowlers that people don't really remember. Jimmy Anderson in 2019, not only does he only bowl 4 overs in that series, it's the fact that England were missing a bowler in that game at Edgbaston that Smith obviously basically wins on his own.
Could I ask you, Lawrence, just that Joey Harmon asked me this yesterday and we had a quick chat, and he's writing something on those 3, the Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, Troika, if you like. And he said, is there any other equivalent in history, a trio of Test match fast bowlers whose careers align like they do? And I guess, instinctively you go to McGrath, Gillespie and Lee, although perhaps there's a degree of daylight regarding the longevity of say, Lee compared to the 3 current ones, perhaps. But I wondered what you thought of that question that Joey posed.
West Indies, of course, had 4 world beaters for a long time.
Right, so naturally we went there, but can you pick a 3 at a particular point in the journey from, if you like, 75 to 91 to...
No, there probably wasn't. The Holding, Garner, Croft, Roberts was a famous photo of them.
Yeah,
was considered a foursome. Then Ambrose and Marshall kind of a couple, weren't they? So yeah, maybe there wasn't a kind of. I'd have to look at the stats again to see how long those first 4 played together. You go back to the 50s and look at very briefly Tyson, Statham, Truman, but of course they interchanged.
Yeah.
Truman famously didn't go on the 54-55 Ashes when Tyson had his big show. Yeah, fast bowlers hunt in pairs, don't they, generally? And what Australia have done is hunt in a threesome plus Boland for backup and Lyon holding up an end. It's been, you mentioned McGrath, Gillespie, Lee. You also had Shane Warne doing the lion role.
Useful.
Lee was a step below those first two because he'd go at 4 and over, and England didn't mind facing him. In the way sometimes that Stark can go at 4 and over, England will look to get after him. But no, I think it's a good shout.
We settled, by the way, on the period of sort of 78 to 81 when Marshall and Garner had made their debuts in 77 and 78 respectively, and Holding was already the big one. And those three played a lot of test matches together in that 3-year block from 78 to 81. And obviously Croft would be your fourth, or Wayne Daniel, or the end of Andy Roberts perhaps. But yeah, we went with that in the end. But the thing that marks these three, Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, is that they all effectively emerged together. Maybe Hazelwood was slightly later perhaps, but essentially they're like a sort of three-headed monster.
There's a brilliant conversation that Joe had with Damien Fleming on our Patreon channel this week, where Fleming charts his own recollection of finding out about each of the three, and his when he found out that there was also Hazelwood, he couldn't believe that there was another one, and of course all New South Wales as well. Who is the next one? If you throw it forward to say 4 years from now, the next Ashes down in Australia, who's their attack leader? Do you know? If Jai Richardson was English, we'd be talking about him all the time.
Yeah.
He's amazing, and he's been so unlucky with injuries. I honestly think he could be...
He's not far from a return, right?
So he's not played any cricket since January, where he had a shoulder surgery, and part of the reason why he had the surgery was actually following a conversation with Cummins, who said, get it fixed. You'll regret this if you don't get this fixed at some point in your career. He's not played a lot of Test cricket, but when he's played, he's done really well. If you look at his numbers across formats, it's averaging in the low 20s. He played 1 test in the last Ashes series. It was the day-nighter, takes a fifer. He bowls quick. He's very tall and moves the ball, swings the ball away as well. I honestly think that he is someone who, if he can stay fit, will be instantly world-class. Massive if, given the lack of cricket he's played.
And Morris is seriously fast as well.
Yep, but similarly hasn't been on the park a lot. There's a lot of people like Ferguson Neal, who's much younger, did really well.
Nottinghamshire's Ferguson Neal.
Yeah, he's much slower, closer to 80 than 85 mph, but his first class record is amazing. So they do have other guys, and they've also got some younger guys who were part of the under-19 World Cup squad that won it in 2024, the same team that had Sam Constas. Vidler played in the Sheffield Shield final. He looks really exciting, already bowling 140 Ks. And there's another one, I can't remember his name, who was drafted in to a senior squad as a reserve quick for a white ball tour recently as well. So they're Australia. I sort of think they'll always be fine.
So what we're saying is, even if all these guys get injured, England are still screwed.
Well, maybe this might be though. And Stuart Broad's attracted some headlines this week for calling this Australia side the worst since 2010. I think what he means by that is the worst Australia side coming into a home Ashes series. They are ranked number 1 in the world, so they're okay. But I think it's more in terms of, it's been very rare that we've come into an Ashes series down under where there have been so few questions about the England 11, the makeup of the England 11, and actually quite a few around the Australian 11. Just before we move on, Lawrence, we were at the PCA dinner last week, and part of it is that the media get to talk to lots of players, and there were a lot of England players there. And one player I thought you perked up when he was speaking was Brydon Carse, talking about him preferring the Kookaburra to the Dukes, which is quite interesting because he doesn't have a very good home record, but did really well last winter in genuinely quite unfavourable seam bowling conditions.
Yeah, he said something about the seam on the Dukes is, because we all know it's quite pronounced, it kind of almost gets in the way, he gets a better grip on the Kookaburra. So Pakistan and New Zealand, his first test experience, he takes 27 wickets at 19. You're thinking this guy is special. He almost leaps right to the front of the seam bowling queue. And then against India on these heartless pitches with the Dukes ball going soft, he's averaging 60. But I mean, I did try to, my question to him was a kind of, do you feel you got the figures you deserve? Because I thought he bowled better than that. But he's obviously thinking ahead and going, I'm not going to read too much into that. I prefer the Kookaburra. Now, very few England bowlers have said that down the years. So I think Carse will be fascinating, not just for that reason, but also because, and this was put to him as well, he will be a bit of a sponge for some of the abuse. Because he's a fiery guy. He's going to get stuck into the Australian batsmen. The crowd are going to get stuck into Carse. He won't care.
Yeah.
He loves all that stuff. So he's going to be an interesting magnet, I think. And all this talk about Archer, Wood, Atkinson, Carse could quietly be England's trump card.
Yeah. Harry from the Discord asks, what's the current moral Ashes score? For me, it's about -10 England, -10 Australia. Phil, has everyone lost their minds this week? There's still 6 weeks to go. There's a quote from David Warner this week, who was asked, what do you think is going to happen? And he said, the Australian way will prevail because we're playing for the Ashes. They're playing for a moral victory. Pause. There's your headline.
Yeah, and it was met with tumbleweed.
Total silence.
It was agony to watch.
And then Zach Crawley, in an interview in The Times, I think, said all the stuff that happened after the last series, talking about the moral Ashes after what happened with Johnny Bairstow, that was just a consequence of us drawing the series. In my eyes, if they'd won, they would never have said it. So it's a compliment that they felt the need. Am I missing something, or are people conflating the phrase moral victory with the morals, in inverted commas, around the Bairstow stumping?
Well, let's go to Dictionary Corner first.
Well, so I've been getting sick to death of this moral victory nonsense, right? So I thought, what is a moral victory? Google. I thought AI comes up with a moral victory is when a person or group appears to have lost a contest or dispute, but has succeeded in proving their principles, or, and this is the crucial bit, or has achieved an important positive outcome. Now, the moral victory drivel began before the 5th test at the Oval, when a journalist said to Harry Brook, after what happened in Manchester, where Australia was saved by the rain, would it be a moral victory if England win at the Oval? It'd be a 2-2 draw, but would it be a moral victory? And Brook sort of went, yeah, so you could almost say it would be a moral victory. Now, from that harmless repetition of the journalist's words has sprung an entire culture in which Australia think that, or some Australians think that any England win has to be a moral victory. It's another moral victory, mate. And they got very angry when England made a song and dance about the handshakes at Old Trafford against India. You know, you woke up to sort of 10 comment pieces from Australian journalists fuming that England were doing their moral victory thing again. The moral victory thing's got nothing to do with the Bairstow stumping at Lord's, as Crawley seems to think. It's everything to do with Australia's perceptions of how they think England play the game. It was just a harmless remark by Harry Brook that has turned into a philosophy in the minds of some people, and it's gone mad.
Phil, have people lost their minds? There's still a really long way to go. JP asked, could Phil and Lawrence enlighten us on what the build-up of Ashes series used to be like and how that rivalry used to show before social media existed?
Same as it ever was, as far as I can see it. Same as it ever was. Have people lost their minds perhaps a tiny bit more, or perhaps a little bit more prematurely than in the past? But I knew this question was coming, so I dug out some stuff that has been written by me and others in the past, 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, and I don't feel like the dial has shifted particularly. One thing I would perhaps say is that the general nature of so-called sort of public debate, the town hall scrap on social media has now become so extreme and sort of knee-jerk polarized that it creates positions, I think, that become more entrenched, and it becomes uglier, perhaps as a consequence, than it used to. The thing that strikes me more than anything else is the agonizing lack of any sense of humor. That's what bothers me about it. Because if people take any of this seriously, then they're missing the point, surely. And the Warner thing was so ugly on so many levels. It seemed to kind of encapsulate this sort of the bad jokes amplified by bad actors, delivered by bad communicators, And if you deliver it with a genuine smile, as opposed to the cynicism with which Warner delivered his line, then you can make anything palatable, really. But there's a fundamental lack of lightness in all of these conversations, and we're probably guilty of it as well, to be honest, hand-wringing ourselves into oblivion over here. The phrase that came to me this morning was the moronic inferno, right? Which is the name of a book nicked by a bloke who's one of the great writers, Martin Amis, and And he loved sport, by the way, for precisely the kinds of reasons that we're sort of questioning it. But anyway, that's by the by. The moronic inferno feels like it's a good summary, really, of the bullshit that goes into this phony war. But is it that different? You take it back a few years and Nathan Lyon's talking about ending careers and David Warner's talking about the Ashes built on hatred and it's a war and it's all this sort of quasi-militaristic bullshit. It's always, in my experience, in my professional experience, there's always been a ramped up element of this. And I find it ugly personally. I find it a massive turn off personally. I've been to Australia 3 times and I've always been a little bit shocked by it. But Christ, we are just as moronic over here, as far as I'm concerned, in the way that we talk to the players, the way that we treat the players on the boundary, what happened to Khawaja and others in the long room. It's all part of a piece for me. And I would love to think that the game could stand for something bigger and more virtuous than that. But we don't live in those times and the game isn't rooted in that reality.
All fair and well said. But Lawrence, is there a part of you that sort of enjoys it?
Well, look,
he's right in the guts of it, by the way. Well, you love it. You deliver it in your own quintessentially English style, but you love all of this.
If you write for a newspaper and their desk rings you and says, have you seen what Stuart Broad says? We want 400 words. That is your job to turn that round. Now, look, I would say a couple of things have changed. I mean, I'm going to Australia, I think it'll be my 6th Ashes tour. And what has changed since the first one is social media amplifies it to the degree that when either country wakes up, there is a fresh set of comments to react to, and they can react to it immediately. Now, in the old days, pre-Twitter, newspapers would take probably 2 days to react to what had happened in the other country, by which time it's kind of lost its sting, and then the other country has another 2 days to... So the whole thing slows down. Now you can't move for insults. The other thing is that this time, England, when they go to Australia, are always disliked, and the banter is part of it. This time there's that, but there's also Bazball. There's a hatred of England plus the hatred of Bazball. There are 2 things that the Aussies are going to go at. There's a country and there's a philosophy. And the Australians, look, they're a brilliant cricket team, but they've never engaged with what England are trying to do at a serious level. They've always just mocked it because they think it's slogging. You know, David Warner will still come out with things like, they don't care if they lose because they say that's just the way they play. That isn't true. I've never seen a sportsman more gutted than Ben Stokes after the Edgbaston Test, which Australia won by 2 wickets, setting up, as he probably suspected, an Australian retention of the Ashes. Stokes and McCullum are 2 of the most competitive people you could ever meet. They want to win, but these kind of narratives have taken hold now because there is this dislike of the fact that England were the aggressors in that series. That's what it boils down to. Historically, Australia have been the aggressors, England have been the reactors. And England have sneaked Ashes wins, where Australia have bulldozed their victories. You look at the overall record. So now that this dynamic has changed, and I think that unsettles Australia. This isn't me going, you're spooked or you're rattled. This is just my observations about how Australians have reacted to Bazball. And that's what makes this tour especially fascinating. The previous 3 looked like hammerings in advance. This one is could go either way.
Yeah, it's all Andrew Miller's fault for coming up with the term in the first place. It gave you a bestseller, Lawrence, so all's well.
I'm not complaining.
Well. No, for sure.
Bestseller, yeah.
Seller. But if there wasn't a tag to it, if there wasn't a label to it, then it would be harder to define, and rightly so, because as you say, there is a lot more nuance to it. It's a way of playing that results hopefully in the outcome that you're desperate for as a bunch of, you know, type A personality, alpha sports people who've got to that level because they're obsessed with winning. But it's about how you get there rather than the end game in and of itself. But if it didn't have the label, then it wouldn't be able to be clipped up quite so easily. And, you know, Sam and Higo or whatever from the grade cricket being able to say, so Bazball, is it shit or is it all right? And then you can respond to it. They asked that question literally this week to various, one of whom was Adam Gilchrist. And he said, well, we were playing like that 20 years ago, which is true.
And then you also said it's just cricket.
Yeah, right, indeed. And thankfully, he's the sanest man in the room.
But that stuff doesn't go viral, does it?
No, it doesn't. But therein lies the truth. that there have been cricket teams that have pushed the line. I'm not talking ethically, folks, relax, and experimented with playing a different kind of game, and invariably, by the way, it's worked. And obviously, Australia were pioneering that. Mark Taylor was the first person to say out loud, "We want to score at 4 runs and over." You know, it was a straight quote. And this was back in the late 90s. So there's nothing new under the sun, apart from an increasingly febrile social media.
Can I say very quickly? I'm probably running out of time on Bazball, but that Australian team naturally scored at 4 and over. Those guys didn't have to do anything different. You got Hayden up front. You go through them. Go down to Gilchrist at 7. They're all scoring quickly, naturally. This England team have scored quicker than that Australian team did, 4.5 and over. And these are players who are being told to go and do something slightly different. It's like, you be the best version of yourself. Choose your attacking option and stick to that. That is a different message from what the Australians were doing. So, I mean, we interviewed Curtly Ambrose at the World Cup last year in the Caribbean, and he was like, Bazball. He was fuming about Bazball. He was like, don't talk to me about Bazball. We played Bazball and looked at the West Indies run rates, even in their heyday, and it was below 4 and over.
Yeah.
So what England have done is reset the expectations, and also of what opponents expect. It's why Shubman Gill set England 600 at Edgbaston in the second test, because there is this sort of hidden fear of what England might do to them. So,
but I also think that they were stung by what happened when they went out there 4 years ago. To play passive cricket just didn't work. You know, to have 2 openers that were blunters just didn't work. You play into a very strong cricket team's hands if you play like that, and so, you know, the logic is there. But as you say, we have, you know, strained whatever life is left out of it. The thing that makes me a bit uncomfortable, and don't get me wrong, it ramps up the jeopardy in this series. It makes me more determined to stay up through the night and watch it. But I genuinely don't think these two teams like each other very much. And I genuinely don't see it resolving itself at the end of the series. I don't see those drinks being had and that mutual respect taking place. The times when I've been in Australia, it hasn't come across to me as performative. It's come across to me as genuinely quite vicious. And there's a genuine kind of enmity between both teams, which is only, and both cultures, which is only being ramped up more by the things that we talk about. And that I find a bit demoralizing, because I've always wanted to understand the Ashes as these two kind of frenemies, love-hate relationship. They need us just as much as we need them. We are two sides of the same coin, ultimately. And we create this theatre because basically, in the end, we need it and we kind of love each other, really. And we're like warring siblings. But I feel that less and less. The more I listen to the stuff, and the more I watch it, and you know, like England didn't have a drink with them at the end of the 23 Ashes, and there are reasons for it and whatnot, but it feeds into this idea. I'll never forget being in Brisbane, that test match, the Mitchell Johnson test match, when Jonathan Trott was on the edge and went home soon after it, and everyone knows the story. But you'd have been there as well, Lawrence, in that press conference that night, when they were actively humiliating him. And Warner was the one, but a lot of the journalists, and even those who were working for Cricket Australia, they were feverish around this awful story, really. And yeah, I'll never forget it. You know, they kind of basically sort of slandered him, questioned his courage. And there was no sense whatsoever of the private turmoil of this bloke, you know, and there was very little sense of any kind of recalibration afterwards as well. The next test match, you're preparing for a broken fucking arm if you're Jimmy Anderson at number 11. So look, I don't want to direct this towards the other lot. I think that we all have a responsibility for it, but it sits less comfortably on my shoulders with each passing Ashes.
I mean, historically, actually, I think there's more enmity than we imagine. I mean,
you mean going back through?
Yeah, I mean, so Bodyline, for example, was an absolutely vicious campaign.
I'm a romantic, Lawrence.
That's fine. I want to give you a bit of realism. So Bodyline, you go in the 50s, Australia convinced that England doctored the Old Trafford pitch where Jim Laker takes 19 wickets, and as a result, in 58-59, they picked chuckers and draggers and they win 4-0, and it's their revenge series. There are these sort of spikes in Ashes history where they're really going at each other. And this winter may be one, and we may calm down come 2027 when Australia next visit England. But I kind of hope we don't.
But it's also, there's a lot of...
Then you touch on something, do we want it? If we're being honest about this, do we really want it?
I think two things. One,
I don't.
I think a big part of it is how familiar a lot of the characters are. A lot of these players have played lots and lots of Ashes series against each other, so there's a known rivalry between them. Both sides have something to prove still. England need to win in Australia. Australia haven't. That team never won in England. I think there's unfinished business for both of them. And I also think a lot of cricket is meaningless, and we know it. So I think we seize on to the meaningful cricket.
La 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 la.
In 1945, George Orwell wrote an essay called "The Sporting Spirit." And just to back Lawrence's point up here, he said, even a leisurely game like cricket, demanding grace rather than strength, can cause much ill will, as we saw in the controversy over Bodyline and over the rough tactics of the Australian team that visited England in 1921. So
it goes back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Moving on, Phil, you had a chat with Mark Wood.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
Well, of course. He's one of the great men.
He didn't know it was just with you, though.
No, he didn't. And I couldn't work out if he was pleased or disappointed when it was only my head popping up on the Zoom call. But yeah, it's always a joy. He's a one-off. And he has, well, the media is there for him whenever he fancies having a run at it. And hopefully he's got a few more overs yet to bowl. But he's not just a character. He's as smart as they come. And I love him, basically.
Well, here is Mark Wood. Just on Mark Wood and his connection with Dineticq. Mark Wood knows the power of great biomechanics. It's been part of his story since his Loughborough and ECB days. At Dineticq, they've built on that same research foundation to create PaceFlow, a tool that brings elite biomechanical insight out of the lab and into the nets. They're proud to have Mark as their brand ambassador, helping them share that science with the wider cricket community. See how insight can unlock performance at Dineticq.com. Dineticq, smarter bowling made simple.
You're back home in the beautiful northeast, but you've been in Loughborough for the last few days, getting up to speed, literally. How's it been for you?
Good, yeah. Loughborough been back probably 3 or 4 times in the last couple of weeks. So now building up of what's going to be a lot of travel. Obviously Loughborough at the minute, but then off to New Zealand and Australia. So a lot of travel ahead. But yeah, Loughborough's been good to get amongst the fast bowlers and have a bowl down there in a tent. You don't obviously get that outdoor practice in the northeast. You're stuck indoors and stuff like that now because the season's finished. So it's invaluable really to get into that tent at Loughborough and pump the heating up and stuff. So it's like being abroad. It's been nice.
So is that the way they do it? They want to try and replicate the conditions that you're going to get down in Perth and so on.
Yeah, they do that. So they have heaters and fans and stuff in the tent, and then you quickly gone from like coats, jumpers, long pants. All of a sudden, like Brydon Carse bowling in a vest the other day. So yeah, it's chalk and cheese when you're in and out the tent, but just trying to gear you up for what's to come.
Do they sort of pipe in sledging as well from pissed Australians and stuff like that?
Yeah, we've been champed about 50 times the last week, so we're just getting used to it.
Loughborough's like a home from home for you, isn't it? I guess really. You must have a love-hate relationship with the place.
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of years. A few years ago, there was a pace program. I did that for 2 or 3 years, where it was the pace bowlers that would train throughout October through to December, and then you'd often go to Potchefstroom in February time and do train there amongst athletes. I remember Jimmy Anderson, Broad was there, one of my first ones, Liam Plunkett, and then in my later years, it was the likes of Ollie Stone, Tom Helm, all these kinds of guys. So it was a great mix of people on those pace programs. But we would go down on the Sunday night, and then you train through to Friday afternoon home, and then you'd start again. So they were long winters. They were good and helped you develop a lot though. Whereas this one, it's only a couple of days in and out. A few would train and then we'll get out of there. So a love-hate relationship. There is literally, I can't think of that much to do there. So you literally have your training head on. You're at the ECB centre. the Death Star, as we call it, because of dun dun dun. When you get in there, you train hard and then you get out of there.
And big question, obviously, how is the rehab coming along? It's the question on the lips of every English cricket fan and quite a few Australians as well.
Yeah, good. It was frustrating. Obviously, summer I didn't get to play any cricket, and my knee at times when you think that you're just about ready to play, it was not just quite there. So I got knocked back a couple of times. But yeah, in the tent it's been going well. I've had the speed going out and stuff out, and the pace is getting up there. So yeah, building into nicely into this New Zealand first and then the Australian leg.
And so, if we can throw it forward 6 weeks, are you confident that you'll be robust enough to take that new ball if you're picked?
Yes, hopefully it's not just robust. Hopefully, I'm like in form and bowling well in the practice games and in the nets, and can put my hand up for that game. But at the minute, like I said, the rehab hasn't just been a straight curve. It's been a bit up and down, but I'm in a good position now where I'm hoping to kick on for that game. So, I never want to give an answer where it's like, yes, I'm pumped, I'm ready. So, yeah, it's going. I'm in a confident place at the minute and feeling a lot more positive about things. So, quietly confident. Yeah.
How's it been for you mentally last 6 months or so, knowing that you've not been able to get out on the park?
It's been annoying, to be honest. All the rehabs when I've been injured, I had a couple of bad ankle ones where at that time I thought about, I've had enough. Yeah, I think about giving up. Like, it's just, I'm never going to be able to do it. Whereas this hasn't been like that. It's, other injuries, elbows I've had and stuff. You always believe you can get back. And this knee one's just been annoying. Like, you keep thinking I'm nearly there, just about to press the trigger to play. The fifth test against India, I was so close. And then when I was at my top speed, my knee swelled up, so I had to have it drained and stuff. And then again at the back end of the year, Durham, I was so close to playing again. But again, I just kept getting this slight swelling. The ECB, of course, with what was coming up, we're like, look, it's a risk we don't need to take. So, thankfully, the last few times I've bowled, there hasn't been that swelling there. So, yeah, it's much more positive. But well, not been in any pain or anything. It's just it looked like I've got a bloke's leg for a change. I've had the swell and I thought, oh my God, I look like a bloke now. I haven't got these skinny chicken legs. So it's nice to actually have a real thigh for once.
All right. Well, look, let's talk about, if you like, the physiology of fast bowling then, because I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but you look like an ordinary bloke, right? Physiologically, you look like an ordinary fella. You walk down the street, you don't look at you and think you're the fastest bowler on earth. Yeah. What is the secret? What's the, if you like, the confluence of various reasons as to why you bowl the speed of light?
Broth in the winter, hammer piece, pudding sandwiches in the summer. I think that's the top and bottom of it. I
thought so.
I think a little bit of action. I think if I do all of my scores, that will surely say like if you break it down, I have a lot of attributes that in my action that help people bowl fast. I also think that I have a lot of attributes where I've spoken to strength coaches and other coaches. I said, look, what is it like? Why can I bowl fast? Like, how do I do it? And I think that I've got a little bit of a hybrid body where I have some fast twitch and some slow twitch fibers, whereas someone like a Jofra is pure fast twitch. Like, wouldn't expect Jofra to run miles and miles and get a good score, but he could sprint quickly and get be one of them type of guys. Whereas I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not the fastest sprinter. I'm not the best marathon runner. I'm like in the middle of everything. Can get good jump scores for my size. I've got good strength scores. So I think it's a combination of loads of different things, technique with my ball and all these sort of attributes I've got. And I think I just transfer energy well from when I land to when I go. And I think I have a desire to bowl fast as well. I think that's got to be in there. Like when I'm bowling, I think I want to push my body to bowl quicker. As I'm getting quicker and quicker, sometimes now I'm almost disappointed if like I come off the field and I'm like, Dan, what was that? And he's like, oh, I'm like, oh, not fast. Next time So I think you've got to have that desire as well.
So you do kind of measure yourself by the gun then, right? Do you? You have an eye on it?
Yeah, I think the more I've got on my career, because that's what I'm ultimately judged on. And I know bowling well is one thing, but I'm in the team to bowl fast. If I was in the team to bowl 80 mile an hour and be accurate, there's more players that are in England that are better than that than me. So my job is to try and bowl fast, to try and make something happen. And, there's been a couple of times where I've maybe not bowled as well in the McCullum era, and I've been disappointed and said, oh, like, I wish I'd done this. Or tactically, and McCullum just comes up and he's like, yeah, but how quick was that ball? Or can you imagine what their tail enders are thinking when you're bowling that and stuff? And I'm like, actually, I had a good point. And then it gives you confidence to go back out there. So he spun it on that way on me a couple of times, and it's worked.
Are you aware of fear in the air at times?
Yeah, because I have to face it as well. Don't get this
Sure.
wrong. When I come into bat, I'm pretty nervous, and facing Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, your blood's and your heart's gone when you go out to face those guys as well. So yeah, I know exactly how it feels.
Has there been any occasions when, without naming names, but against good players, and you felt like the intimidation factor, the fear of injury, if you like, to put it bluntly, has become in the air in the heat of the battle?
Yeah, maybe not fear of injury, but I've certainly felt where players maybe don't react how they might naturally react to balls, or they might be stuck in the crease, or they're not as committed as they were, or they seem slightly more set back, or they might just like you get like almost like a mentality feeling. We'll use the head in the game as an example. At times during that game, I felt right on top of batsmen, but then someone like Mitch Marsh actually came and got 100 that game, and he took me on. And I didn't, I felt like if I was slightly short, there was one shot he played, he pulled me for 6. Then when I was slightly full, he drove me for 4. Whereas when you're on top of people, you might get your margin for error becomes slightly more because they're not into the shot as much, or they're worried about something. So I certainly remember that game where he played me different to other lads that game, and played brilliantly.
That you did. Well, look, we'll come back to the Aussie question in a minute. I want to talk to you a bit about Dineticq, which is a new pace flow app that has been pioneered by Kevin Shine, who most cricket people know. Kev Shine, former lead fast bowling coach at the ECB, now works at Notts as assistant and fast bowling coach, and Mark King, Professor Mark King, who is a head honcho of sports biomechanics at Loughborough. At that love-hate place of yours. And you've come on board as well as an ambassador, I guess. Why did you want to get involved in this in the first place? What is it that jumped out at you?
Well, initially it was pure respect for Kevin Shine, someone that I mentioned those ECB days, pace bowling days where we'd have to go up in the pace program up to Loughborough and all those, dark days. Or me and Shiny did a lot of work on my action, trying to see if I could take the load off my ankle, and will help with my run up and all that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of work with Shiny. So purely when he picks up the phone and says, I've got this thing, would you mind looking at it? Of course, I would look at it out of respect for him. So that was initially. Then I got to know more about it. I've been doing behind the scenes while I've had time off my level 3 coaching. So it's been me, Chris Walk, Stephen Finn, Chris Jordan, Sarah Taylor. I've been in this level 3, and we've been doing the fast bowling bit. So it's been so interesting to learn about the dynamics of fast bowling, what it takes. That's like 5 or 6 key elements, and that's not to say it's the same for everyone, and that's why coaching comes in, where you've got to adapt to that. But I think this app almost helps with that as well. It's almost like it gives you coaching or insight without having to have loads of knowledge or in depth. It almost works out for you. And a key part, which is something that resonates with me, which everybody, I wish I didn't have the tag, but unfortunately I do, is that injury side of things. And it can, it's almost like, I don't know if people have seen or heard of the Vicon, where they put the dots on people and you get like a skeletal view of how your bowling action is. This sort of does that and shows you like where you might put extra pressure on, where is particularly good, where your action, like this part is robust, or your speed of your run up, and it can give you all that in a rating, and then rate your action from then. This isn't telling you or it's not an app that tells you to change your action. It could just point in the right direction. If you're working with a coach, or you think that you're getting injured in a certain way, it can certainly point you in the right direction. So that was what sort of intrigued me, was the fact that I was doing my level 3. I had Kevin Shine involved, and it's about fast bowling, which is always interesting.
And it's available as well to people at all levels, young and old. If you want to get a bit quicker, then that app is available to you. Pace Flow app, it's called, yeah.
Yeah, I'd have got it, and they did my action, and I was thinking, oh, this would be embarrassing if they say that it's not very good. But luckily, the scores are okay. So, yeah, I was panicking when he said, "Oh, send us through any footage of you bowling," and I was thinking, "Oh my God, I do I really want to do this?" Because he'd done a one of himself, who was like a an average normal cricketer, one of a little kid, and then he had mine, so it was like comparison. So it was really interesting, and yeah, I enjoyed it.
So I guess you've done your level 3. So without wanting to throw your career too far down the line, is that something that you're interested in at some point in the future?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I've done a little bit with young lions and in lions like Flintoff and Neil Killeen have had us in, and they were fantastic with me. Honestly, even like Neil McKenzie to work alongside him, these guys were really, really good. And obviously, having been in the England setup a little bit, I get to see, McCullum, Chetan Patel, worked alongside Collie. There's been a lot of guys who I've spent a lot of time with. So, like from the coaching side of things, it's just showed us a totally different perspective on like the game and like how to deal with people and what people are thinking about. And I guess in a way, you've been doing a lot of it. If someone said what coaching is, Jimmy Anderson has probably been doing that to me for years at mid-off and helped me out. Same with Chris Jordan and other people. So you sort of build up a lot yourself. And I think down the line, is it something that you do? My head's not there yet because I know I'm getting older, but I still want to keep playing for England. Like I literally love it. And I tried my hand at broadcasting a little bit. Again, that, walking into those um, arenas, though, it was very different to what I imagined. There's a lot of work goes on and a lot of insight, and it was fascinating, really. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do after, but hopefully there's a little bit of cricket left in us yet.
Plenty of cricket. Let's not worry about that. I'll come back to you in a couple of years with that question.
Nice one.
So the big one's coming up. It's pointless to pretend otherwise. It occupies a lot of people's thoughts. Is it now? Well, let me put it this way. Do you try and keep the Australian wolf from the door? Do you try and manage how much you're thinking about this thing?
That I've tried. I think embrace it more than anything. Like it's exciting. Like this is the exciting part now. It's the build up. It's there's no more cricket until this for me. Like that's it. So, it's been like I said, a long summer, and I've geared up for it. I always had this in the back of my mind. And then days on the treadmill, and I'm visualizing running or out in the streets running about. You're visualizing being at Perth and running at the stadium, who you're bowling at. And now, Stokely said something which was fantastic, even just at Loughborough. He says, look, now you've got to stop thinking this is rehab. Now you're gearing up for Australia. Now you're thinking this is training to get your match ready for Perth, which is a great switch in mindset. I think, right, I'm not just getting my body right to play. Like now it is go time. So it's actually embracing it and just thinking, this is exciting. Australia, there's a lot of chat from Australia. There's a lot of chat in England. It's that build up, and I've been a part of a few Ashes, but there's a quiet confidence in our group that we could do something special, and I'm sure Australia, they're very difficult to beat at home, but we can give it a good go.
How do you live with that pressure, right? Because it's almost like the less you've played in the last 6 months, the more important you become to the team. It's often one of the things in cricket, and we know that you have a good record against Australia, in Australia as well as over in England. You've always done well against. I think you took 17 wickets in four tests last time out. Tough tour, but you bowled well. People know how important you are to it if you're fit. Do you live with that? Do you embrace that? What's it like having to live with that day by day?
Yeah, you're never better when you're not in the team, right? So whenever you're not in the team, you haven't got that pressure of someone saying, "Well, that spell was rubbish," or he didn't play well this game, or why is he not getting as many wickets? So you're never better when you're not in the team. So I just think from an England supporter's point of view, and a fan myself, being watching this summer, we've got massive depth in the bowling. Like you've seen lads like the lads that have been picked to go on this tour. If someone comes in, you wouldn't think, "Oh, I'm not sure. We'll look short here." We've had lads come in who can all take wickets, all the different venues. I really enjoyed bowling Australia last time. It was hard work, but I think like we've just got to pride ourselves on, let's just keep charging in, hopefully these pitches with a bit of pace and bounce. We've gone there before with slightly different attacks. This time, they've geared up more towards pace, copied probably more the Australian attack with 85 plus and that top spinner that Bash is. So we've copied their line of thinking a little bit, and what's been really successful for them. So I'm hoping that, my top end is where I'm going to be. I'm not hoping to be 85 plus. I'm hoping to be 90 plus most of the time and have an impact in the games where I can.
There's been some talk about the pitches, Mark. I don't know if you've been over this or not, but the stats suggest that the pitches have swung and seamed a bit more than if you like the cliche of an Australian pitch. What are you lot expecting this time round?
I didn't want to be prickly towards you, but I'm honestly not bothered.
Yeah,
It's like, I think it's
you've been
irrelevant.
prickly. You want to be prickly? That's fine by me.
But I think it's irrelevant because, when you're in the heat of the battle, no one's going to go, oh, the pitch, like it's going to be, if you bat well, you'll get runs. If we bowl well, you'll get weights. And that's the way I look at it. There's been times where people have said stuff about the pitch. I mean, last time, Melbourne, I remember the pitch, everyone was saying, oh, this pitch is seaming a little bit more, something like that. And then we got done by an innings. So, like, it's, if the team gets out in front, if someone both runs and the team puts pressure on the other team, it seems to be, that's the way that the games I found in the last Ashes series went. Whoever had their neck in front, the other team then had to try and claw it back, and it was very hard to do that. So, I think the pitches and stuff are me thinking about the pitches now. It's almost like irrelevant. I think you've got to wait until you're there and adapt on the day to what's happening, and that's what whichever team does that quickest will get in front.
Australia's the one place in the world, probably more than anywhere else, where if you're a real quick, you can dominate. Like Ashes series through history there's a fast bowler's name that goes before the Ashes. Johnson's Ashes, or Rodney Hogg's Ashes, or Frank Tyson's Ashes, and all of that. Lillian Thompson's Ashes, and so on. Are you kind of aware that your components, what you bring, your specifics, your super strength, if you like, this is the place where it can really, really blossom and come through?
Yeah, and you want to impress, those guys out. Brett Lee, when he's watching, like I grew up staying up late at night to watch Harmy on the television. Brett Lee charging in there, and you're like, oh, this looks tasty. Same with some of the other special names you've mentioned there. Johnson again, staying up late in an English time to watch all this cricket when I was younger because I loved it. So I'd love to have my name amongst there somewhere if I could do a good performance there. But I think that might be looking a bit too far ahead to think of whole series and stuff. I even just think back the last one, like Woaksy's impact coming in. I'm sure people are now thinking about him. So, a chance to do something special, but you just want to do yourself proud, your country proud, family, everything like that. You just want to give a good account of yourself, and I think Australians would respect fast bowling if it's done well because of that's their conditions. So, if I do well, hopefully by the end I might get a little bit more respect by the end.
You've been involved with the England side, since 2015? So you've seen a lot of different iterations of England's top 6 or 7. Have you seen a stronger 7, a more dangerous 7 than this? Or is this as dangerous as it gets?
It's hard to say over that length of time. I can think of some pretty destructive players in that time. But what I will say is that this 7 feels settled. It feels, I'm pretty confident in those guys. There's nobody I'm looking thinking, oh, like they've played a lot of tests together now. There's a definite way of playing. There's a clear-cut plan. And from above, there's confidence from above that breeds into that top 7 as well, and huge talent. And I think across the top 7, they're all good players of fast bowling as well. So when you're going to those conditions, you'd hope and that we can get runs on the board, and that's always been the challenge going to Australia. I'm hoping that although they're very attacking, we don't just score the runs in 60 overs. Hopefully a few more overs to get me feel of. But yeah, I know we'll be attacking, but I think that 7 certainly to me, I'm very confident in the players that we've got, and happy with our lineup.
You touch on something there though, Mark, that there does seem like there's been a shift in tone and language around the side. Certainly in the last 6 months or so. Have you sensed that as well, albeit you're kind of in the side and also slightly on the edge of it, but that there's been a shift in emphasis, more towards finessing the style rather than putting a foot to the floor and to hell with the consequences?
Yeah, and to give you a media answer, I think when the other regimes, you might be at this end, and then a new whatever manager it is. If you think of football, they play a very passy style. Then it's like, well, we've had enough of that. We'll go to direct, and you seem to go all the way at the other end of the scale. And then what happens is it creeps back somewhere towards the middle, and I think that's what's happened with us. Like, Baz has come in, he's freed everybody up. We've played this fantastic attacking brand, and all it's done is it's just crept in a little bit to being a bit more attacking, but also a bit smart as well, and knowing the right time to press the button and the right time to soak pressure up when we feel the opposition not playing well. Because ultimately, that's what you got to do. You got to respect when they're playing well, and then when there's a chance to put the pressure back on, that's what this side's trying to do. And yes, probably sick as media of hearing those lines and that kind of speech, but because ultimately that's what every player's sort of saying. But I think what's happened is there's been more one-on-one chats, not just a group way of playing. There's been a bit more like, right, individually, how do you play and what's the way that you would go about it? And yeah, just taking that line in a little bit from one end of the scale to the other.
McCullum described this upcoming series as the series of our lives a couple of weeks ago.
He's got a way, honestly, I don't know how he does it in the dressing room, the way he speaks. It's not easy to tell the media how it is, but like there'll be days where you've had hard days, and the way that he portrays it across, with like you might give a boxing or a horse race, or like an analogy, in some way he does it, and then you leave there and you're like, next day I'm going to charge in again. I don't know how he does it, but you're like, I'm ready. Like you're 20 overs, you're knackered in the day, like your boots are off, and then he comes in, he says, and you're like, you've got energy again. I'm like, I'm ready. Right, let's go. Like, there's amazing ability, a man management skill to do it. And like such confidence in his players and the way that he speaks. He never like says, like I do a lot. He never goes, but it's so clear and level, and he's great at doing that and making you feel empowered for the next day.
Does he ever lose his cool? Has he ever given you a bollocking?
No, but I can tell when he's irritated. Put it that way. Like it's not been a bollocking, I would say, but I could tell if something's annoyed him or something, or there's a way of thinking that he's like, I'm not quite sure. And he's not gonna like hide. He'd be honest with you if there's and Stokes is exactly the same. There's been times I've suggested plans to Stokesy and just getting like a quick no, and that's like, right, okay, fair enough. So there's honesty then, but I think that's what helps. There's clarity, there's honesty. So when they tell you things, it seems genuine. You believe it. It's not like it's like, oh, half. Am I allowed to say half-assed? It's not like half-assed. It's almost like right, they believe it. This is genuine. This is how we're going to go about it. If it doesn't work, fair enough. We'll think of something else. There's real clarity to their way of thinking, and you understand why they're thinking that.
You've done one tour of duty to Australia before. There'll be a few lads on this tour who've never been on an England tour before down under. What's it really like, day by day? What's it like as you walk through customs? What's it like when you go out for lunch? What's it like in the grounds themselves? What's it like walking out of the Gabba?
Yeah, I've had two different experiences. So I've had a tour where I went with the Lions and I joined up late and never played a game, but I also then went on a tour where I played 4 out of the 5 games. So I've had a tour where I've essentially ran drinks around the boundary, which was a bit tasty. And then I've had one where you're on the field. And to be honest, and this has been different from player to player, but I remember that first game at Brisbane when I played, now those some lads were a bit like wide-eyed on the edge of the boundary, like getting a bit of flack. But now I've actually enjoyed the crack a little bit. Like I've played in Australia. I went for 3 years on the Gold Coast and played club cricket there. So actually, like I felt like, especially in Brisbane, which was the one that everyone was talking about being the harshest, I felt like, I don't know, a bit more at home, like, or a little bit closer to home because I'd played there and I knew people there, and I just tried to just embrace it and have a bit crack with people in the crowd and like bounce a bit off. If they're going a bit too far, then you can just ignore it. But customs, yeah, it's strict. It's way more strict. You've got to have every bit of mud off your boots. There's no mud English soil allowed on their soil whatsoever. So I've had a couple of boots taken off us before. In general, out and about when you're not playing so well, as maybe the odd comment as you're going by, but I'm sure the Aussies get that in England as well. The thing about last time was that it was COVID, so there wasn't many English fans there because it was I remember the Brisbane Barmies were there, so English people living in Brisbane. Melbourne, there was a pretty good English following of the English people that lived there, but like this time there should be a lot more going over, especially the first couple of tests. I mean, it seems like everyone in the Northeast going to Perth and Brisbane, so it feels like, we should have good back and good support, which I think will help when you're out and about, or if you're under a little bit of pressure on the field. I might have to pocket myself. I'll just feel where the Barmy Army are stood for 5 minutes just to take the heat off a little bit. But it is a pressure situation, and like when they're over here, they will play on that and prey on it and prey on a player. If you show any sort of weakness, they'll be on you. So you've got to almost just be willing to have a bit back and forth with the crowd as well.
Well, I heard that there's something like 150,000 Brits heading out across the 5 test matches.
That's amazing, eh?
Yeah, that's quite something. And it goes back to what I was saying. There are Ashes series and then there are Ashes series, right?
Yeah.
This is big, and then maybe a little bit bigger on top of it. Have you got the sense that while this is all good fun and the phony war and everyone's throwing back and forth across the various ponds, but that the Aussies are a bit more engaged in this one than they have been in the past, perhaps because of England's form and style and approach, and that they're, if you like, more engaged with the contest? Have you got that sense? I certainly have.
Well, I think you're probably better off answering that than me. From my point of view, if I was them and the last few series have been 4-0, 5-0, 4-0, whatever it is, I'd be pretty confident, to be fair. So I'm sure they're probably gearing up to know that we've got some quality players in our lineup. I've heard them speak respectfully, about Harry Brook, Joe Root, other lads. So they obviously respect our class players, but I'm sure that they'll be quietly, we're quietly confident. I'm sure they are as well, and that they're ready for that battle. So, I'm not. You're probably in a better position to answer that than me. But I think, if you're an Australian and the last few times England haven't played particularly well there or haven't done well, I think they're probably coming from more the fact that, oh, you're making lots of noise when you haven't got a good record. But I think this group has a quiet confidence about with that. We're ready to give it a good go, more than the previous tours.
Well, that's good to hear. All right. Well, look, it will all play out and it all come out in the wash. Mark Wood, joy as ever to talk to you, mate. Thanks ever so much for joining.
Thanks, Phil. Top man. Thank you.
Lawrence, England are playing this Saturday, the first T20I of their tour to New Zealand. 6 games, 3 T20s and 3 ODIs. What can we learn, if anything?
I mean, I would say there are 2 areas that are kind of interesting from an English perspective, given that, all roads lead to Perth right now. That's how will Jacob Bethell go? Is this relevant to whether he starts at number 3 against Australia? A few of us spoke to Alistair Cook this week, who said there was no debate in his mind. It should be Ollie Pope, which was kind of a bit of a turn-up because most people have been drifting towards Bethell in this argument. So can Bethell force his way in through white ball runs? Some people will fume about that because it's irrelevant, though England have said that the 50-over series in New Zealand is their Ashes build-up. And then there's the question of the fast bowlers, how fit, what state are they going to be in by the time they get to Australia? Only Brydon Carse of the Ashes fast bowlers is in both the ODI and T20 squads. In New Zealand, Jofra Archer's joining for the ODIs. Guys like Wood, Atkinson, Potts are going to be flying over early to get acclimatised. So I think those are the 2 issues. That no one will remember the results of this series. It's going to be about making sure no one gets injured and can Bethell break in.
It's also not that long until the T20 World Cup, but also it's quite hard to work out what can be learned from a series that are almost being played in polar opposite conditions to what England will encounter in India and Sri Lanka in the new year. Some new figures in the New Zealand camp that I think some England fans probably don't know. You'll know one of them. Northampton's Tim Robinson averaged 9 for Northampton in the Blast, but scored 100 against Australia in the T20I the last week, perhaps showing that the Blast is the ultimate short form competition.
Yeah. He's always said it.
Easy runs.
Bevan Jacobs in the middle order is someone who got picked for the Mumbai Indians last year, age 22, having played fewer than 10 professional T20 games off the back of one really good New Zealand Super Smash series. Big hitter in the lower middle order. And then Jacob Duffy, who I suspect a lot of people won't have heard of, was the number 1 ranked T20I bowler, not just last month, but for a lot of 2025.
Worcestershire's Jacob Duffy.
Yeah, I think he's played for Kent as well. He took 13 wickets at 8 against Pakistan earlier this year and 6 wickets at 14 against South Africa. He's tall, quite quick, and gets a lot of away swing with the new ball. He looks good. Some Ashes related news. TNT Sport announced their Ashes coverage and what it will look like yesterday. Alistair Cook, Steve Finn and Graham Swan will be the on-ground pundits in Australia. Ali Aikin and Rob Hatch, two TNT regulars, rugby and cycling commentators respectively, will lead the commentary from home. Instinctively, Phil, what do you think? For me, hybrid commentary is not the one.
So the three out there in Australia will be effectively having a flowing conversation with two chaps in a blackened booth somewhere in London watching it on the tube.
Yeah.
Okay.
They won't all be there at the same time, those three. I think between the three of them, they will cover the 5 tests. But
yeah, okay.
Anyway,
well, technology is a wonderful thing, and I wish them the best of luck. But so much of listening to cricket commentary is the repartee between the two or the three individuals. I've never liked 3 in the room, by the way. The Australian way of doing it, I always sensed that Benno was always forced to shout loudly in an overcrowded bar, which never really suited him. I've always preferred the 2. I like the way the Sky do it with the third person and whatnot. But anyway, so much of it hinges on that. Now, if they can, if you like, pull the wool over our eyes, and if they can effectively do it without it feeling a bit discordant, then fine, crack on. I just hope it works, and I hope that the punters, both legacy fans, dare I say, and newbie fans, and they are consciously going for new fans. They're trying to change the outlook of the Ashes. They're trying to make the Ashes like a crown jewels event. That can be watched by, if you like, non-cricket fans. Well, obviously, real cricket fans, the kind of people that listen and watch this show, they're going to be slightly nervy about that, because if there's one thing that we can all get behind, it's infantilizing the game, dumbing down the game. That can be difficult, especially with something as big as the Ashes, as sacrosanct as the Ashes. Hopefully, they've considered all of that. They'll find the right balance, and they'll be able to pull it off. The two commentators who aren't cricket commentators as such, but who are very well respected commentators, I'm sure they'll go fine. They're not going to be doing it if they're indifferent to the game, right? So clearly they're going to be au fait with the lexicon, the lingo, and whatnot. And we don't need old history stories from the Ashes 70-71 necessarily for it to be a very good fun broadcast. So I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be okay. I would like, a personal view would be, I would like to have had another kind of older voice among the punditry. They're all from that era. They're all from the 10-11 team. And I'd loved like a Gower-like figure in there, or even somebody who isn't English, like an Ian Smith-like character, just to shake it up a little bit. I think it could become a little bit mono if we're not careful. But, those 3 are all united by knowing how to win Ashes in Australia. And while we all have our personal tastes regarding what we like in commentators, they certainly will be able to talk from experience.
We had a question from George on the Patreon, who said to all of us, what have been your favourite broadcast punditry combinations across the ages? You can combine commentators or studio hosts, TV or radio, etc., etc. Who is your favourite, Lawrence?
Favourite combo? What?
All time.
There was one particular exchange that always makes me chuckle. It probably won't make either of you chuckle right now when I describe it, but it was Richie Benno and Chris Broad, and it was I think it was early days of Channel 4, and John T. Rhodes had just pulled off some ridiculous piece of fielding, and Chris Broad said, "You run out of expletives to describe John T. Rhodes." Nice. He meant superlatives, and Richie Benno, there was a pause, and he said, "Which particular one did you have in mind?" And just left it at that.
That's lovely.
Excellent.
So the answer is probably Benno plus anyone.
Yeah.
Though on radio, I would say, I think the greatest underrated summariser is Vic Marks.
Yeah.
He's got a brilliantly gentle tone. He's never critical, but can convey criticism, and is has always been underrated. I think he and Aggers together have been, as a commentator and a summariser, have been excellent. That's radio rather than TV, but that's probably my answer.
Phil, who's your favourite one as a youngster before you started working in cricket?
When I was a kid, I was obsessed with Australian coverage of any cricket because it was this world that you'd read about, but every now and then you'd get hold of a video, VHS, or there'd be a little kind of half-hour midnight BBC highlights. And I had a video of the 86-7 Ashes tour, the one that England won. And I just loved the general tone of Australian commentary. And I've had a deep love for Bill Lawry ever since. Never has there been a greater gap between a way a man bats and a way a man talks. Like he batted like a corpse and commentated like a kicking horse. You know, it was amazing. But there was a real warmth and love there, I think, for the game, but for the contest. He always, I thought, gave the English a fair run, even when perhaps they didn't deserve it. And he kind of... Benno belonged to all of us, but Bill Lawry seemed to encapsulate what it was to watch cricket in Australia, open-mouthed, a little bit scared, but in awe of the whole thing. And I used to love his commentary. Obviously, he would work with Tony Greig and gently wind him up. They were a great double act, but there was substance there as well. Another Aussie commentator I thought was brilliant was David Hooks, and he died. He got punched and died in his 50s, around the time when he was going to become, I think, one of the real legacy commentators. I always associate him with West Indies Australia test matches. He was there for the 95 tour when Australia won it. He commentated on the Lara series of 99. He was a brilliant commentator, clear, concise, but again, great feel for the game. They've had some real good ones, the Aussies, no doubt about it. I mean, over here, well, you can't get past the Atherton Hussain duo, like the power couple of English cricket. You can't get past them these days. They've taken English punditry onto a different level, I think. But yeah, there's a lot of good ones. A far more fun question would be the real crap ones, but then maybe we'll do that
on the Patreon, yeah. And don't release it to anyone else.
Yeah, loads of names on that one.
Yeah, I think my favourite one growing up was always Holding, because you could tell he really cared. He really, when there was a young, exciting fast bowler, you could tell that he was really enjoying it, and also wasn't afraid of showing his emotion one way or the other. So here in 2010, for example, crying on air at the aftermath of the spot fixing stuff, just because of how sad he was on a human level for Mohammed Amir, just 17, 18 at the time.
But the really sad coda to that, though, is that he's not interested in cricket anymore, that he's become so disillusioned with it that he's almost now detached himself from the whole show.
We've lost a voice there who's willing to call out injustice and inequity, and he was brilliant at that. Not just the racism angle that he was very strong on a couple of years back, but also the game's governance. And of course, it means a lot to him because of what's happened with West Indies. And he refused to take Alan Stanford's money quite presciently back in the day. One of the few of that West Indies legend group who did. And yeah, I think we've perhaps lost a level of principle in today's cricket commentary because everyone is scared of upsetting powerful people.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
I think another great Australian commentator, I think Mel Jones is superb.
Yeah.
I interviewed her.
She's brilliant.
For the show, but for the magazine as well, a couple of months ago. I think she's superb. There's a lot of good ones out there. I think if you're looking for an actual duo, a modern duo as well, an international modern duo, I think obviously Ian Smith he's special, and when he comes alongside Ian Bishop, I think those two work beautifully together as well. There's a studiousness with Bishop, and whose research is second to none, and then there's a more kind of clubbable quality to Ian Smith. I think they work brilliantly together.
Elsewhere in the international game this week, India beat West Indies in the second and final test of that series. It was more competitive than the first one, which isn't saying loads. India scored 518 for 5. Jaiswal and Gill both scored hundreds. Only Sachin in 2010 has scored more hundreds in a calendar year for India than Gill has in 2025. Gill's on 5, still has a couple of games to go. India won by 7 wickets in the end. Kuldeep took 8 in the game. And in the second innings, Phil, John Campbell scored his first Test 100. His previous best was 68 in 24 tests. And then
Are you going to give the context to that?
Nope.
I am.
Well, no.
Then you have the power to edit it out. So we did a scurrilous show, Lawrence.
You weren't supposed to say this on the main show.
Well, I'm going to. We did a thing for the Patreon, tongue in cheek, but our worst Test 11s of the 21st century. Campbell's
opening in yours. Is that what you're telling me? Oh, his.
He was opening in mine, yeah.
Highest score of 68 from, I think, 40-something innings.
Yeah.
If you listen back, I don't even go there because I've always quite liked John Campbell. There's a player in there somewhere. So I was dead pleased. Egg on your face, Yaz. And then, watch him fly now. Watch him go.
I look forward to it.
In the 4 Test matches a year he plays.
And then Shai Hope scored his first Test 100 since his 2 at Headingley 8 years ago, which was good to see. And then in Lahore, this was a great test. Pakistan beat WTC champions South Africa with Norman Ali, the main man again. Now 39. He averages 14 in Test cricket since his recall last year.
He's cool.
He took 10 wickets in the game on a pitch that took a lot of turn in the end, but was fat enough for Pakistan to score 378 in the first innings.
The beauty of Norman Ali, sorry, just to interrupt, is he could very easily have not played a Test match and just bowled in the sort of Derbyshire leagues for 20 years or wherever it may be, and probably been just as happy just going about his left-arm business. As it is, he's become one of the most potent left-arm spinners in world cricket, but almost kind of by accident, really, as he approaches his middle age.
I genuinely think you can't have a bowler like that who hasn't played loads of club cricket, and he has played loads of English club cricket.
Right, there you go, yeah.
Because he isn't afraid of going at 45 mph and really throwing it up there. He's playing on pitches that offer turn. He's really good at, as soon as there is a lot of turn, capitalising on it. So he's got a really good arm ball. He gets loads of players out, bowled or LBW, one that just goes straight on. And Whisper, obviously, it's been a very difficult time for Pakistan recently. They have quite a good opportunity of getting to the WTC final because of their set of fixtures. They don't play India, obviously, but they also don't play Australia. And at home, they've got South Africa, Sri Lanka, and New Zealand. And in the last year, since halfway through that England series, they changed the nature of pitches in Pakistan. They've been very successful. Their away series are England away, Bangladesh away, and West Indies away. You can see them winning enough Test matches to at least challenge, which would be...
Can you imagine Pakistan v India in the World Test Championship final? I mean, there won't be a handshake for a week, will there? At Lord's. But it's a great story, and it's what Pakistan cricket need. I mean, Noman Ali, I was in Pakistan last winter to watch him run through England with Sajid Khan in the last 2 tests. He's probably the most condition-specific attack in world cricket, isn't it?
Great.
Those two probably aren't going to play any away tests unless it's one of the Asian countries. So I've loved watching that. It was interesting. Shaheen Shah really nipped in with 4 at the end just to kind of break the spin stranglehold.
Good for the narrative as well.
If you win the toss in Pakistan now and you score 300 first innings, it's game over.
But it's a smart move because they laboured on flat pitches for a while, even up until 2022 when England went out there, Rawalpindi and so on. So it's a good move for them, and it's, if you like, revitalised or re-energised at least their Test cricket.
Yeah, I ended up watching a fair bit of this Test. It was free to watch in the UK. Free to watch in the UK on the PCB website. For people only in the UK. It was really fun to watch. It was really, really fun to watch.
What were the crowds like?
Not full by any means, but there was good noise. So it was at the Gaddafi Stadium in Lahore. It wasn't empty. There was a good noise.
There was a good noise.
Yeah,
it's not empty.
But there was a good noise towards the end of each of the days accompanying the cricket, and it was good to watch. And sure, by the end, it was spinning loads. But
that's right.
Up until that point, there was a fairly even contest between bat and ball. And even on the final day, Jewel Brevis, for a bit, looked like he was threatening to do something extraordinary, hit a runner ball 54 in the end. But at one point, you thought, could he do this? So, yeah, it was a very, very watchable Test match. Your man, Simon Harmer, I think he's 7 wickets away from 1,000 first-class wickets. And given what the pitches are, at the moment, with 1 test to go, you'd say he's got a fair chance of doing it this test series rather.
So just a 2 test series?
Yeah.
Rubbish.
Yeah. Anyway, to finish the show, we have a chat with Sonny Baker. So you'll remember that at the very start of the season, we had Sonny on the podcast when he hadn't made his county championship debut. And the prospect of playing for England at that point was maybe not a distant dream, but certainly wasn't the forefront of his mind. I caught up with him at the PCA Awards dinner last week. Here he is on his breakthrough year. Sonny, we spoke, I think maybe 6 months ago. At the time, you hadn't made your county championship debut. You just moved to Hampshire, and obviously a lot happened this summer. Just reflecting 6 months on from that conversation where I think I asked you explicitly, are you thinking about England? And you said something along the lines of, well, maybe down the line, we'll see. How do you reflect on the last 6 months?
Well, I mean, firstly, just wow. I mean, just getting the opportunity to play for Hampshire has been an amazing difference. Like, just getting that game time really does make a huge, huge difference. Obviously, starting in Guyana, then county championship after that, and everything that they said they do in contract negotiations, they've done. So sometimes you get the, we'll do this, we'll do that, and then sign up a 3-year, and then suddenly it doesn't all happen. But immediately, I've got, playing time when I needed it, and time to put my feet up when I've been struggling with little bits or anything. It's really been great. Really enjoyed it.
Specifically on championship stuff, you hadn't played a lot of first class cricket before this summer. Exactly. Before the Lions saw nothing. What have you learned about yourself as a bowler playing red ball cricket? There's some real high moments, taking that 5 for at the Oval. I think in the game against Yorkshire, you got Bairstow out twice. What have you learned yourself as a red ball bowler?
I think part of it is just gaining more experience of playing and learning what it's like to bowl a third, fourth spell on the second day in a row. Like, this is quite hard. And picking times when to try and swing the ball, because obviously I know I can swing the ball both ways. It's just trying to work out when am I really trying to swing it and when am I just trying to be accurate, or how am I going up and down the gears. That's a big thing I've talked with Pop about this year, has been when do I need to operate at that flat out, just try and make something happen because the game's gone a bit flat mode, or am I trying to drop down and be a bit more skillful, the pitch is offering a little bit more, etc. And I mean, having Kyle Abbott at mid-off, as I said in our interview first time, was been just fantastic.
So talk me through that, because I was going to ask you about Kyle Abbott. He's wicket taking. She's a cheat code, right, in county championship. What have you learned from bowling with him?
I mean, he just keeps it really, really simple. He just wobble seam, smacking top off stump, and just talks about being absolutely relentless and stingy with going for runs. And as he showed when I think we were playing a game at Worcester where he bowled 10 overs for 1 run or something ludicrous like that. And when you're bowling with a guy like that, he just doesn't miss, and shows that you can't afford to miss when guys are proper players. And sometimes you get away with it, but not to proper players. And Abbo's a testament of having bowled at some of the best in the world, and bringing that down to county championship has been great to watch.
Fast forward to the 100, one spell in particular. What did it feel like when you were bowling to David Warner, someone who you probably don't even remember a world in which David Warner wasn't playing international cricket, and you're beating him outside edge, inside edge? You look like you were having a great time. What did it feel like in that spell?
I mean, that was pretty surreal, bowling at guys like that. And it's not like I've not bowled at international players before, but there's a difference between international players and then, this guy is David Warner. I've seen him on TV, and you almost feel like you know them. I've kind of said that similarly with guys you share a changing room with. You feel like you know them because you've seen them on TV, and then you have a little battle with them, or you get on well, and you're like, wow, this is actually the David Warner. But yeah, I mean, ball was swinging that day, bit of carry on the surface, and yeah, it was a good start to the game. Good start, set the tone. That's what Kat said. Almost throughout all of the 100 games has been with the new ball, just look to set the tone and then go from there.
Jimmy Anderson in the dressing room, what was that like?
Unbelievable. I tried not to go too hard with questions at the start. I mean, he probably knew that I was a fairly inquisitive naturally anyway, and I thought I'd tone it down just a little bit and try and make him think, oh yeah, this guy's a good lad. And then you end up having casual conversations and actually getting a little bit more, rather than, here's my notebook, here's my 17 questions that I've prepared, Jimmy, can you answer all of them, please? So then when you ask him for the coffee, he goes, head goes down. And I thought perhaps I'll save that and just ask a few more casual bits. And as I was saying to Pop the other day, to be honest, who's a bowling coach at Hampshire, it's just dialing in my questions a little bit more specifically. He spoke about seeing me as someone who just asked a lot of questions, not for the sake of it, but just because I want to learn information. I might use that bit later on. But my questions as I've gone on has been a bit more specific, like, oh, what field would you set for this specific delivery, or with this particular batter? Like, for example, Steve Smith, you bowled at him a bit. What do you think about what line you would have your deep backward square, for example? Like really specific stuff like that. And rather than just asking, tell me everything you know about bowling in red ball cricket, because obviously that's quite a long book. He's written a book about it. So, yeah.
And then you get that first England call up. Just talk me through the moment when you first know you're going to play for England.
I mean, the way I describe it really is almost like I love steak, right? It's an analogy, but I love steak. It's like having 3 steaks laid down in front of you all in one go. Like the 100's gone really well, got an international debut, suddenly actually playing for England, like everything's crazy. Not Red Bull, but 50 over, T20 debut, everything's going all crazy. I probably hadn't really had time to process it all and really enjoy what was going on at the time. It was more, right, emotional management is the most important thing now. Just control what you're doing and try and execute and do a job. But now I've had a bit of time to reflect. And I mean, even at the time, Headingley was absolutely packed. And I think Beth said before, he's obviously the captain at 19s for me. And he just said, yeah, you'll never really get an environment like this where everyone is cheering for one side. Everyone wants England to win, so they'll be right behind you. Obviously didn't quite go the way I wanted it to, and we move on. It is what it is, but yeah, it was a great experience, and one I'm sure I'll hopefully laugh at in the future and go, oh, what a great experience that was. Funny to have started that way, but yeah, hopefully there'll be much better days than that in an England shirt.
You're obviously a very inquisitive guy. You're very curious about the game. Drawing on that experience of the debut, is there anything you've learned from it now, or are you more looking at it back in terms of, actually, I don't need to go into it too much, so I don't need to overread into it, and actually I need to keep the highs not too high and the lows not too low?
Brookie actually asked me the other day, what did you write down in your notebook, like somewhat in jest? Oh, what did you write down in your notebook about after that game? I was like, well, to be honest, I just wrote down stuff happens. Not stuff, but you know what I would have said. Stuff happens, and fundamentally, there was a baller bowled, I think it was a fraction over top of leg stump, pulled for 6 over deep square. You've got the whole offside field in, and context of the game, had to set really aggressive fields, and fundamentally that means anytime they get a good contact on the ball, it's 4. So you're going to go for runs, and sometimes bowling up the hill at Headingley's hard work, and it's just one of those things where you move on. Joff came over from cover. I really appreciated that, actually, to come and stand at mid-off and just say, oh, how's it going, mate? Like, how's your heart rate type thing? And I said, it's actually all right. I'm just, I know what I'm trying to execute. I'm just missing a little bit. And every time I've missed so far, Markram's climbed onto it. So, hopefully I'll get him back one day.
And I'm not just saying this. When you were on the show earlier in the year, we've not had that much positive feedback on an interview that we've done in a very long time. So people loved hearing you and your refreshing attitude to the game. So all the best of luck for the winter ahead as well. Pleasure. Cheers for joining us. That is everything for this week's show. Cheers, Lawrence. Cheers, Phil. We'll be back at the start of next week after the first couple of T20Is.